everybody. Welcome to another episode of Elixir Mix. Here on our podcast, we talk every week about different things related to Elixir. On our panel this week, we have Mark Erikson.
Hey there.
Chuck Wood.
Hey, everybody.
I'm Eric Berry, and we have a special guest, David. Now, David, I'm not going to try and pronounce your last name. We talked a little bit about this beforehand, but let's hear how you pronounce it and some of the reasons or some of the different explanations of that. It's pretty fun.
So, hi guys, my name is David Magalhães. It's the Portuguese, more or less common name that you have a different translation. You have in Spanish, you have Magalhães, and you have in English also as Magellan.
Yeah. So is that like Magellan, the astronomer?
Yeah, he was an explorer. So he was from like the 16th century. He tried to circumnavigate the world by boat, and he didn't make it. He didn't make it. Although his crew, they achieved to travel around the globe. So yeah.
I like it. So Mark is a biblical name, Eric is a Viking name, and Chuck Wood is a nursery rhyme. Right?
I thought you were going to say
how
Charles.
much wood could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood, right? Oh, a tongue twister, right. Yes.
As much wood as a woodchuck could chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood. I've been saying it all my life.
I'll bet you have. Awesome. Well, we're having you on today to talk about your experience with Elixir, and you've had some blog posts recently where you talked about different ways to upload data, upload files to S3 and stuff like that. So, why don't we first go ahead and talk a little bit about your history and what brought you to Elixir?
So. More or less about 1 year, 2.5, a friend of mine approached me. He wants to start a company here in Portugal. He had worked for almost 5 years or so in Switzerland, and he wants for me to join in. And also, he wants me to play and to start learning. Elixir. So this was a total new language. For me, I am a Java developer. I have more or less 3 years of experience as a Java developer, and I'm also a PHP guy. And learning Elixir from my previous experience that I have with programming the language was a very lightweight, easy to handle language. I think it's straightforward. You don't have a lot of like for Java. You have a lot of components. It's a very forgetful language. And the thing about Elixir, the pattern matching, the functional language, all the stuff, I think it's very neat. I think it works pretty well. And as soon as I start to go dive into it, I started learning that for other projects like WhatsApp and I think Discuss, I think they both use Elixir and Erlang. And yeah, I until now it's been a great pleasure to work in Elixir language.
So we talk with a lot of guests who have come from a Ruby background and have moved over to Elixir, and that path has seemed to be fairly seamless in a way. You come from a Java background and moving to Elixir. What is that experience like, coming from something that's so type heavy and so structured and, might I say, painful to something like Elixir?
Yeah, like I said, I started learning Java in the first company that I started, and I think Java is a great language when you are trying to build some big thing, very robust thing. Like I've worked in some big companies, and the microservice architecture. I think it's a big thing that is coupled with Java programming language, and I've always have been working with, for example, with PHP, that is a scripting language, and I kind of feel like I feel very lightweight working with PHP, but PHP has its own problems. It's not a very good language to create functional software to deploying for the real world. And the Java is a very heavy type of language. I think it's a very difficult language to grasp on, and we kind of need some time to learn and to know how things going, and it's a bit messy. And the first thing that I noticed when I moved to Elixir, the first thing is that in the university I've already have dealt with the Prolog, that is very similar language to Elixir, and for that part was kind of easy. But for even so, I needed to change the way we create software for Elixir, because in some cases it's very different to create the software in terms of code in Java and do it in the same way in Elixir. But at the end of the day, after all the things that I've learned to manage how I did things in Java and how I do things in the Elixir, I think it's a very light language, very easy to learn, and it's like a kind of a logic language. Every code we type, I think it's more clear to understand it in Elixir than to understand it if we have written that in Java.
Yeah, so you mentioned that you'd worked with Prolog before, and that's not one that I've ever worked with, but I'm familiar with some of the ideas of it. And
I have Prolog in university, so it's not kind of I've tinkered with it for about 4 months or so.
Okay, yeah, and I work with some people who there's a large Java group that I'm familiar with, and we do have one of the members of our team who's an Elixir team. One of the members came from Java, so that is an interesting transition to hear about, because I've asked, like, what is that like moving from Java? And he said, like the idea of accessors, right, where you have getters and setters for everything. And like, just to work with JSON, you have to create a class with nested classes that all have accessors just to access JSON, because we were using a GraphQL interface, and it's like, well, in order to support that, you basically need to build an SDK for your service if you want to provide that service to a Java. But we have to, like, as Elixir professionals, if we have a service that we intend to be consumed by enterprises, they're going to have a lot of .NET and a lot of Java. So we still have to be aware of Java as a client of our SaaS systems or anything like that. So yeah, that's an interesting heritage coming from the Java perspective. So I just wanted to comment on one of the articles that you recently posted about was about using Phoenix and uploading with S3, with AWS, S3's service for file storage. And that is something I think a lot of people, that they would like to be able to use that as well, because S3 is a common service that people like to lean on. So could you talk a little bit about your approach for how you do that, or how you would recommend people to start there?
Yeah, so this article, I think more or less about 1 year since I've wrote it. There was some similar book articles for explaining how to upload files. For I just I think the way that I was trying to do it is that to attach the user ID to the file name that we want to upload it, and for that is a little bit tricky because first you need to insert, and then after for inserting you do the upload of the file that I use the Arc library, and on the top of that, and I think one thing that it was a huge boost in terms of this article being for my top read article is that I explain how to perform tests on that functionality. So even in Java, when I wrote for a feature, I tried to create all the tests necessary to know that feature was well implemented, and even in the future, if we change that feature, we know that we can test it again and again and be notified if that feature stopped working. And for this article, I put a lot of focus on how to test this feature of uploading a file to S3. And I think I even got some people on the Elixir forum to link to this article when some guy was trying to find a way to test this feature on his software. So for another, I think, good point, and being able to create tests in Java with the frameworks that exist, I think the testing features on Elixir is very simple. It don't require for a lot of us that testing in Java requires even to do some kind of integration test and stuff like that. And it's a big plus for Elixir to kind of do test-driven development. So we can write the tests in Elixir are very easy to write, and I'm using some other libraries like Flex Machina that can create to mock data very quickly into the database and have like for the test creating a test creation really fast.
Yeah, testing is a super important aspect of Elixir to me, especially. I love TDD, test-driven development. And so I just wanted to point out a couple of things that you had kind of said there. So you're saying, like, in this particular article, you're talking about the Arc library, and about half of your article, which I think is great, deals with testing. And then you bring out this, let's see, it's this gem. I'm sorry, not a gem. It's a mix project called Fake S3, which I'd never heard of.
It is a gem.
Okay, yes, sorry, it is a gem. Thank you. I'd never seen that before, and I thought, oh, that's great. It's a lightweight server that responds to the same API of Amazon S3. So like that's another way of providing that mocking interface or a testing interface for integration style tests when you're wanting to have a Phoenix application that interacts with an S3 system. So those are, and I just love that you took the approach of testing is so important. Like it's half of my article.
Yeah.
And it's not just because so many times you see like, this is how you make it work. And I'm like, that's awesome. How do I test that? I don't even know how to test that. Right. So I think that's great. And I'm glad you took that approach there. So cheers.
Yeah, thanks.
You know, it's interesting. This article we actually referenced recently when we added image upload for our Elixir app. So
Nice.
we followed your directions and everything. The one thing that I ran into is in here you show how to execute this gem or have this gem run in Travis. How do you handle it locally? Do you also have the, I guess for the listeners, let me give it a little bit of an explanation. So part of this gem, the fake S3 gem, what it does is it creates this server that acts as a proxy, essentially, or captures these S3 uploads and returns the response as if S3 would. So it's hijacking the response and returning that so that you can test it. However, and it works great on Travis by running these scripts that you have in your post. What I've run into is, how do you handle that if you're doing constant testing, or at least off and on testing throughout the day? Do you always fire up your own server before you run tests, and then afterwards you kill it, or do you just leave it running all day? To me, that seems like I don't really enjoy doing that.
Yes. So for another part of the article, that is, I have to mention that I'll to test it, and for another thing is that we have continuous delivery, we have continuous deployment, and for that we use Travis. So anything related to testing a feature, if it is needed for external tools, I try to include that into the article also. So when I am developing and I need to test to run the mix test, I very rarely reboot my computer. So I normally have an uptime for months. So I have a terminal window that I have run the fake S3 command, and I leave it to open until I reboot my machine. And when I reboot to my machine, I run that command again. And yeah, that's the way I have it work. I don't think it consumes a lot of resources. So yeah.
Cool. I appreciate that. So you have another post where you talked about Puppeteer versus WKHTML to PDF. I've also been back and forth on that a little bit. I'd love to hear your insights.
Yeah. So I think it was like 4 or 5 months ago, I needed to generate like an invoice report for the app that I am creating. And when you search for PDF generation in the Gex repository, you find that WKHTML to PDF is the top dependency, or in this case, it's a wrapper for the binary that allow you to generate PDF files with HTML code. So I've tried to tweak to use this functionality, but I had also a lot of issues, mostly in terms of the design and the rendering engine that was creating this PDF file was creating, like, for example, overlapping rows of the tables from one page to another page, some characters, and the application that I am developing is to Chinese, is targeted to Chinese people. So I need to put Chinese characters there, and I had a bit of trouble with that. And I have explored. I did go into the GitHub repository. I have tried to talk with the people who were using this extension, this library, and I didn't find like a perfect solution that render generating a PDF file for my computer, that is it's a MacBook 13 Retina display. It will not generate the same file as I generate on the EC2 for Amazon machine. So I was like kind of the design needed to be perfect because of this overlapping. I needed to do some calculation to count the number of rows that I can put on the page and do some calculation to have this perfect design for PDF that at the end of the day, some guy on an issue I've created sent me to take a look into Puppeteer. So I took a look into it. It is I think Google created it as a feature for the Node.js, and I have done some testing with that, and it worked like a charm. I didn't need to do some calculations to have the perfect HTML design, and I found that one guy also turned it into a gem. So at the end of the day, I have decided to create for my own wrapper. So for guys that create Elixir for application could use this wrapper instead of the other wrapper to generate their own PDF files. And the only thing I couldn't do that I think I have written in that blog post is that the time it takes to generate a PDF file is a little bit longer than the other wrapper, and the size of the PDF file is a lot bigger than the other wrapper available. So, but in the end, it was way easier to generate PDF file using the Puppeteer feature than using some custom binary that had a lot of bugs, and I also took a look into the issues on its GitHub repository, and it was a lot of trouble, and in the end, it was very simple to use Puppeteer, and then I decided to contribute to the community.
Deploy more, pay less with DigitalOcean, the simplest all-in-one cloud computing platform for developers. Scale and run cloud applications faster and more efficiently with effortless administration tools to robust compute, flexible configurations, networking services, real-time alerts, and rapid provisioning, while enjoying industry-leading price to performance with a flat pricing structure across all global data center regions at any usage volume. Spend more time building better web apps and less time worrying about managing infrastructure with DigitalOcean. Build your next app on DigitalOcean. Get started with a free $100 credit at do.co/elixir.
What's your process when you run into these problems? I see that you do like to share your knowledge, which I think is amazing. When you run into a problem like this, what takes your mind from, okay, I'm solving this problem, to, okay, I want to help others solve this problem?
Yeah, so first I try to understand for the problem and to try to replicate it, to try to understand, like, in terms of code. For a lot of times I have going to the dependencies in Elixir and checking if something, like for example, I was using Guardian DB, that is like an extension to the Guardian that allows you to use GWT to authenticate and handle users login. Then I noticed that after for an update, one of my tests that I've trying to test the login functionality and the refresh token functionality and the logout functionality was failing. And it took me some time when I needed to, for example, to go into the dependency files, add some expri to try to understand how the code was behaving. And after some time, I tracked down the code with the issue, and I create a pull request, and then I try to document all things. So if a person that it's not aware of these issues or of this problem, if it's read it from top to the bottom, it could clearly to understand the issue. And I also try to add an explanation how I solve it, how I track it, why I think this is the correct behavior and not the current one is the correct behavior. So I think like when we trying to contribute to, for example, to Stack Overflow, we don't need like to write the shortest answer first. We need to explain why this answer is the best answer, and to create and add all the detail into our answer in a way that when other people see our answer and understand it, why it's the correct answer and not just an answer.
I love it. Absolutely love it. You know, I think all of us have had experiences taking what we've learned and sharing. I know, Mark, you've been working on Elixir courses, and as you've learned, you've also trained. For me, when I started like Teach Me to Code way back in the day, and Chuck helped me and then took it over and like became this like mastermind of media. It was all in an effort to help other people understand and learn, so that it's not only about passing on knowledge, though. It's almost like it's paying it forward. I know that this is what led me here, so I'm going to give it back. But another aspect of training and teaching is it really solidifies your knowledge, because it's one thing to act on what you think. It's a completely other thing to act on something, to share what you're doing, because others can critique you and judge you and say, oh, you're wrong. So it forces you to like, okay, I really have to do good. It's like when you're driving and you don't really think about driving, but all of a sudden you see 2 lanes over, there's a cop. And then you become very, very careful on how you drive, right? All of a sudden you're looking at your speed, you're both hands on the wheel, you're not on your phone or anything like that. It's the same type of thing.
And just to add, another thing is that when we explain how these things work and how we get there, some other problems in the future, when a person are handle it, if it have read the explanation, or if it's read how to track a problem or how to dive into the code, and then the person could try to apply these steps and try for them to understand what the issue is, and try to go deeper and deeper to try to understand how the code work. I think, for example, in this case of the Guardian PB, at the end, when I found the problem, I also could understand better how the dependency, how it works and how it functions.
Absolutely. And you find, like you said, you find additional things that you may not have considered as you're exploring and sharing this stuff. I know that in the Ruby Rogues podcast, one of our panelists is Dave Kimura. And every week he comes out with new videos on driftingruby.com on training people on certain aspects of the language or the framework or whatever it might be. But a lot of foresight, is that a word? A lot of forethought needs to go into, what am I presenting? Is it accurate data? And is this providing true value to others? So it's awesome. I love your blog. I think that it's pretty awesome. Mark, what's your experience in this?
Well, I think a lot of us can identify, I know I can, with that feeling of like in math class, right? The teacher teaches you something. You're like, okay, I got this. I can totally do this. And you go home, it's time to do the exercise. And you're like, I have no idea where to start. And that's really when you start teaching people and sharing with people, it kind of challenges you to realize that maybe I don't have as solid of an understanding of this as I thought I did. And that's a good thing, because it helps us explore more about a topic or a concept. And that's one of the things I really enjoy, is helping people get their idea around a thought process. Because like coming to Elixir, it is a very different way of thinking about development. the idea of OTP and processes. It's a different way of modeling a problem in your mind. And so, yeah, I can get the syntax okay, but it's that mental shift that I have to take to say, I'm kind of thinking differently now. How do I approach my tests differently? How do I, pattern matching can also be a very different way of thinking. So I totally agree that when we teach, we learn. When you teach, you are challenged. People ask you questions and they reinforce that, okay, I don't know how to answer that yet. Let me get back to you. Or as you explain it, it's like, oh, I do know the answer to that. And you're able to explain it and it becomes more solid for you. So teaching and sharing what you learn as you go is an incredible way to just build your own concepts and share it with other people. I agree with the idea of sharing it forward is kind of an idea of that, because we have all grown because someone else has shared. And the other way I like to think about it is the highway principle. That, you're talking about driving in police cars, right? So imagine you're all driving on the highway going in the same direction. So there's a car in front of me and there's a car behind me, and I'm just where I am. And I don't have to be like the end all be all expert on something. I can just share with the person who's right behind me. And I'm the person, I just most recently learned this concept. I can share that with the person who's just coming along behind me. And just the idea of I can learn something from the person in front of me. They don't have to be the guru. I don't have to learn from Jose Valim himself. That'd be great if I could, but I don't need that. I can just someone who's a couple steps ahead of me. And so I don't know. I think it's valuable to go to meetups, to just talk with people and just share, hey, this is what I just learned. It could be a blog, anything. It's important to share because we grow and we help others grow.
I just want to pile on this a little bit because, everything that Mark said, I truly agree with. The other thing for me, this will come as a surprise to no one, I think, given how many podcasts I do, but I process things auditorially. And so it's not just me kind of solidifying or more deeply understanding a particular issue. A lot of times I'll have epiphanies about connections. I'll make those connections when I'm talking about something, right? So I'll be talking to somebody about their Phoenix project or their Rails project or their JavaScript project. And as we talk through it, something I say will connect to something else that I said and something that they said, and I learned something new. So it's not just deepening the knowledge I have, but it's also my way of learning. And I feel like over the years, I have leveled up in a lot of ways more from having the conversations on the podcast, like Ruby Rogues and JavaScript Jabber, than I have by sitting down and writing code. And I learn different ways by doing that. But it all kind of comes together, I think, in a lot of ways when I have the opportunity to discuss the ideas.
I can add a thing that, for example, some of the issues, some of the problems that I've solved, it's that I'm trying like for an hour, try to find out the issue, and I can't find out the issue. And then I turn into for a colleague of mine. I talk loud and clear the issue. I try to explain. I tried this, I tried that, and try that. And at the end, I stop talking because I have figured it out. Because express our problems if we speak it out. At the same time we speak, our process in our head, it's different than thinking about it. So that is one of the things that will help to understand problems is to talk with someone, even if that someone don't understand anything about code.
Yeah, I'll do that with my wife. I'll go downstairs. Let me talk to you about this thing. And I'll get about 3 words in and I'll be like, never mind, I got it. And run it back upstairs. So yeah. Anything else we want to jump on before we do picks?
I can try and talk about another library that I've created. I have created 2, and I think both. I am not sure how, the first one I've created, but I think it was the CyberSource that is a payment processor for gateway, and it took some time. I think since I've started until have it working, it was more or less about 4 months. And the thing is, we had implemented a Stripe as the payment for gateway we were going to use, but our client wanted for us to use another one, that it was CyberSource. And there are kind of, I think they own Visa or Visa own them. and they have a lot of documents how to implement it. They have SDKs, I think, in PHP, Java, .NET, C++, I think, and they don't have anything, of course, in Ruby or in Elixir or other not so common language. And I took a look into the documents that it's kind of 200 pages per document that have a lot of text, and I need to understand what parts of it I need to take it in order to create a dependency to use with Elixir. And at the end of the day, their API that I needed to use, it was clean SOAP. So I don't like SOAP. I have worked in old companies that they had technology with SOAP APIs. It's an XML for output. It's very heavy, and that was kind of a challenge because I needed to research a lot to understand how I create a SOAP-like client to interface with Elixir. And all the projects that exist in Elixir are wrappers to Erlang, and they are very confusing to understand it. And then after trying, I think there is an HTTP client dependency for Elixir that is HTTP Poison. And after some tries, I could understand that if I crafted the XML to payload to match the SOAP API, I could create an bound request, and I can get and process the data that I need to send to their SOAP API. So I have an article in the, it's still not finished, but it's kind of explaining that, for example, when we create an API, for example, a JSON API, we don't think in using HTML or for XML in our code. But for example, in the software I've created it, I already use HTML to generate plugin for templates. I've used for XML to create SOAP requests, and I use it again in HTML in order to generate for PDF files. So at the end, the templating that I think it's also well implemented in Phoenix, and I think it's the most used Elixir framework. We can still use templates in our in creation of our API. So and for another thing, these were my two first dependencies that I've created, and I know that I still have a lot to learn and a lot to improve. And I went to Elixir forum to ask to the users to test my dependency. In this case, it was the PDF file generator, and I asked them for feedback, and they gave me a lot of feedback. Like, for example, how to change the function names to be more meaningful and to better represent the action on it. And it's another way to get more knowledge, how to proper contribute back to the community.
Yeah, I have had the perhaps misfortune of working with other like financial institutions, and they tend to have older technology, and SOAP was one of them. And that was yeah, there isn't great support in Elixir for talking with SOAP interfaces. So yeah, I just kind of did I think the same thing, which is I fell back to using an XML parser and like XPath style way of referencing into the document, and using templating to generate XML files or XML bodies that I would post up using HTTP poison. So yeah, that ended up being the best solution for me too. But yeah, so I feel your SOAP pain there.
Kind of wrapping everything together. I equally dislike SOAP, and it's kind of funny as a developer. You say I hate SOAP, but everybody looks at you like, "Man, what's wrong with you?" Because like that's what makes you clean, right? No, SOAP sucks. But I wrote a blog post way back in 2008 on how to connect to SOAP endpoints using Ruby, and that was before Sabon existed and a lot of the nice libraries that are out there today. And when I did that, I think about 2 or 3 years ago, I was researching online, like, how do I connect to SOAP with Ruby? And I'm Googling it, and I found my article from like 8 years prior. And it was very interesting to me, like, oh, this is the right solution. And I thought, and that's what I taught this 8 years ago. So it was kind of fun to find. And it also lends to the importance of documenting and sharing what you learn, because you'll probably end up going back and looking at it all over again. I used to blog a lot, and I wrote a post on the asset pipeline, and this was before their documentation was really well. So I would actually refer to my own documentation over their documentation until they cleaned it up. It was pretty fun.
Yeah, I think that's one thing too that I think a lot of people they kind of discount, right? I mean, a lot of the documentation we go look up, it basically says, here's a function or a method and here's what it does. And you can get other documentation that is, here's how I did this thing with this library. And it's super handy to have. Or, like Eric said, if something's new, having somebody walk you through how to use it or how to do something with it is very, very helpful as well. And it's something that anybody can do. Eric, do you want to start us off with picks?
Sure. I've got one pick today. And that pick is a really cool tool called Doxify. And what it does is you can create documentation, a really simple GitHub pages hosted documentation using just Markdown. And it'll add the navigation, it'll add the search, there's embeddable widgets in there. But it's kind of fun because I've seen it used in people's learning process. So, for example, I have a repo on GitHub that's open source, and it's just like what I learned. And I have these categories of languages or frameworks or whatever it might be. And in there is where I perform exercises and do stuff and keep notes. But using something like Doxify would allow anybody to go in and create a very beautiful website around that with no effort. You don't need to write any HTML. So anyway, it's at doxify.js.org. That's all I got.
Awesome. Mark, what are your picks?
Kind of in the vein of documentation, I wanted to pick XDoc. It's kind of built into Elixir. The official Elixir documentation is done with XDoc. One of the things I think is helpful with it is to actually run XDoc on your own project. You learn a lot in just browsing what your own documentation looks like. You see what your method or your function signatures look like, and then you start to learn like, oh, I should be using function headers because they'll actually have names if I have, as opposed to where if I had a value, a pattern match where I had a value of nil for an argument, then in the docs, it'll just come out as arg2 or something like that. So you end up being able to create clearer code. And I just love the idea of having like, as I push up my code and I have like a CI server that like a Jenkins kind of a thing that it can run a task to generate my docs and host it somewhere for our internal use so that I can see and everyone can just say, I can browse around on, at least this is the documentation for the master branch. And I think it helps us build better interfaces and better documentation when you start seeing what it ends up coming out as. So I just pick XDoc.
Nice. I'm going to jump in here with a few picks that are much less related to code and documentation. The first one, I've been playing a little bit of Breath of the Wild That's the new Zelda. I guess it's not new, but it's the Zelda on the Nintendo Switch. And I've really been enjoying that. So I'm going to pick that. And then one other thing that I'm going to pick, it's a book series, and I've picked this on some of the other shows. Not on this show yet, because this show's pretty new. But it's a book series that I've been listening to, and the author just released the last book in the series. It's called The Iron Druid Chronicles. It's a fun book series. I don't know how much of it I really want to spoil for people, but essentially the premise is that there is this druid that's been living for about 2,000 years. And there's an Irish god that's after him. This is kind of the synopsis of the first book. And so it's that confrontation kind of comes to a head, and then it triggers all of these after effects, and that's what all the other books are about. So it's been kind of interesting to listen to and enjoy. The other bit of premise to the book is that all of the other belief systems are given power by people's belief in them. And so he interacts with other gods and pantheons and deities. And anyway, it's a really, really fun book. So the first book, I can't remember what it's called. But anyway, you can go find it at Iron Druid Chronicles. And they're all on Audible. And so that's the way I've been enjoying them. So anyway, I'm going to pick that. David, one other thing I wanted to shout out about real quick. Make that two things. So one is I'm going to be speaking at the Framework Summit in Park City, Utah, October 2nd and 3rd. So if you want to come up and hang out, that would be awesome. They're also going to have the core teams there from a lot of the JavaScript frameworks that are out there. So if you're interested in any of that, definitely check it out. It's also a good place to kind of get the lay of the land as far as what everybody's doing in the JavaScript space. And so I have a lot of people ask, how do I stay current on the state of technology and things? And I think this is a really good place because a lot of times the other conferences are a little more focused on a particular framework. And so you miss what's going on in the other communities. So definitely check that out. One last thing, the pre-sale is still going on for my Get a Coder Job book. So if you go to devchat.tv/shop, you can either get the video course or the ebook. The video course does include the ebook. And they are on 50% sale until Labor Day. So I think that's September 3rd or 4th. It's the first Monday in September. So definitely check that out. All right, David, what are your picks?
I don't have anything to really.
What's your favorite TV show?
TV show. I like real world series. I've watching Netflix like the Dirty Money.
Mm-hmm.
And you have famous like political case. I think it's called The Mechanism. Is about the Lava Jato operation in Brazil. That it was like kind of a political scheme to get money from the people to a big company there. I like a lot of like. I like a lot of reading like this kind of to understand how things work and in terms of books, for example, I've read the biography of Elon Musk and Steve Jobs also, and I'm currently reading a book that contains the biography of Nikola Tesla.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, kind of looking to it.
Very cool. Those all sound really, really interesting. I think I listened to the biography of Steve Jobs by Erikson, and that was interesting. I'll have to check out those other ones. All right, David, one last question. If people want to find you online, where do they go? It looks like you're on Medium and GitHub. Twitter.
So yeah, my mainly handle is Speed Dragon with double D. I'm on Twitter, on GitHub, on Medium, and I think on Stack Overflow and stuff like that. So people can reach me out if they want to send an email at like speeddragon@gmail.com.
All right, sounds good. Well, thanks for coming.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, folks. We'll have some more for you next week.
Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CACHEFLY.com to learn more.